I wanted to kind of, oh, we're recording now. Okay, I got it.
All right.
Mike, what's one of the, like, kind of the biggest surprises you found in this, moving from Bible school president to where you are now? Anything that surprised you making the transition?
Well, sometimes people ask me, what am I doing now since being president? And I tell them whatever my wife wants. She pretty much has a list of things that she's got for me. And I owe her an awful lot. So I'm ready to get behind her 100% any way I can help her and anything I can do to be a support to her. So I guess what I've been working on is just establishing kind of a new pace of life. The presidency was probably the most challenging thing I've ever been involved in. And I wouldn't say there's been any surprises since I've left, though the stress and things like that, there's been a great relief in stress and that kind of thing, which has been nice. And I still feel a huge debt to Elam. I'm thankful for, the time that I spent doing that job for those that last section of my time working there at Elam directly. It's been positive, good
Awesome.
experience.
And what are you doing now? You kind of have a new ministry that you started. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when I stepped down, it was, of course, right in the middle of COVID, and I was looking for just how to express myself in this next season.
Sorry, but I neglected to.
Chris, you're not muted.
Now I am.
Okay, there you go. So what was I saying? Oh,
You were starting a ministry with COVID and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. So it was in the middle of COVID, and I was just looking for a way to express myself and things like that. And an idea came. I was talking with my sons and talking with them about what they thought the next phase should be like and this kind of thing. And so anyway, this idea came to start a ministry. I'm calling it Not Many Fathers. And that idea is based on Paul's words, where he says, you have many tutors, you have many teachers, but not many fathers. And I asked my sons, I said, help me try to identify what is it that you think I would have to contribute? What is it that I could give? And we came up with a little statement. I said, I mentor emerging Christian leaders in how to make wise life and leadership decisions, preach dynamically, and boldly launch their visions so they can reach their God-given potential. And so that was what we came up with at that time. And then out of that, it's just been evolving. I've been doing some personal mentoring. I've written some ebooks that have started to catch on, doing some video stuff, Zoom group trainings and different kinds of things like that. So things have been unfolding.
Awesome. Now you're going to be talking, I'm assuming, on change from a ebook that you produced. Do you have other books that you either have already or that you're going to be putting out like that,
Yeah,
like ebook?
Yes. I've got 3 books right now. 2 of them are out. One of them is going to be out within the month. First one was How to Not Quit Your Ministry. And again, I was trying to do something for, with COVID and everything that was going on, just to help people kind of think through and feel through that whole struggle that they might be having. And then How to Lead Your Ministry Through Change, which is what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. And then the one I'm really excited about is going to be released in about a month, and it's already starting to get a little stir of action. As a matter of fact, Craig Campbell helped me. He did a review of the book and wrote some things for me and stuff like that. But it's called Defining Success for the Small Church, and trying to come up with definitions that are different from the normal definitions that we think of when we think of success. A lot of times we think in terms of dollars, and we think in terms of size of buildings, and we think in terms of attendance numbers and things like this. And I identified 10 different aspects of a church that can be grown and developed that have nothing to do with attendance or finances or, those things. I think those things will be affected if you grow in those other areas, but you don't measure those things by that way. So trying to come up with what are the measurements of success that people can be, pastors of small churches can be motivated and inspired and feel that they're making progress in.
Yeah. I see that Craig is also giving you some kudos here. Pastor Mike did an amazing job in this ebook. Loved it and took a ton away from it. Actually, you had me, I read through it. One of the things that I found, I don't know if you're going to do this or not, but you could produce checklists from those 10 things, each like chapter that you had. And people, it would make it really easy to like coach or mentor people through how you're doing in this area. Well, and have kind of some checklists on being able to measure how it's going in each of those areas, which
I have a little thing cooking in my mind from the mastermind group that you took me through, to invite people of similar sized churches together, maybe groups of 8 people, and then do that mastermind kind of format where we sit down and we say, okay, now you've identified, maybe I share a little bit, but you've identified an area that you want to grow in. And now as a group, how can we help you to, do that? And I think that could be a fantastic mastermind type group.
Absolutely. It's actually something I want to be able to do, getting churches together of similar sizes. The other thing I was thinking is getting pastors together, like in their first year, pastors that are just starting out in the church. I think that would be a cool mastermind too. Well, Mike, let's jump into, I think people here to hear about, because, change is difficult. Change in a local church and ministry can be quite challenging. So I know I'm excited to be able to hear some of the things that you've lived through and done. So why don't you jump in and share some of that with us?
Well, first of all, when I look around this group, a lot of you have been around for a while. I don't mean that negatively, but, so I know a lot of the ropes and a lot of different issues, and some of these thoughts probably would be more relevant to people who are just getting started, just moving forward in things. But I think it's what I'm really talking about is a little different than just talking about reacting or responding to change, right? What I'm talking about is being a change agent. All of us have had to become experts in the last 18 months on how to react to change, haven't we? And most of you would know better than me. You'd be able to write your own book on how the flexibility has been demanded of you, and how you have had to adjust and process things and stuff like that. But that's not really the kind of change that I want to talk about in these couple minutes that we have together. The change that I'm talking about is when you are a change agent. That is when, for one reason or another, and I've had this experience in a few environments now, Bible school being one, but past pastor and in other situations. But when you go into a situation that you have a vision in your mind of something that needs to be different in this situation, and then how do you introduce change in? How do you cause change to take place in that environment? We're going to have a Q&A time, and so I hope you will write your thoughts and comments and chime in for that Q&A time. I really believe the church right now is in a place that it hasn't been probably since I was a teenager. And by that, I mean this. I was thinking back to my teen years. I was thinking about the race riots in the streets. I was thinking about the students shot to death at Kent State, when that occurred. I was thinking of the Vietnam War. A lot of times, we look at our political situation, we look at all that's happening with COVID and everything else, and we kind of feel like, well, we're in a situation right now that is absolutely unique. It's, different than what's happened. And sometimes you can have a feeling like we're losing ground. Things are going backwards. Many of us, our churches have less people in them, though our finances may have held up. Our churches have less people in them today. than they had previously prior to COVID. And you can kind of feel like, man, it feels like we're losing ground in this whole thing. And I think it was exactly that kind of environment when I was a teenager that was happening. I think people, there was an absolute rejection of the values of older people and of society at that time. And people were just going in a totally different direction. And in the middle of that, something happened. Somebody began to express some leadership, and a new movement called the Jesus movement, many of us that are here got saved during this time period, was birthed. And all at once, in a time when it seemed like the United States of America was going as far whacked out as it could possibly go. I'm talking Vietnam War. I'm talking, they make movies about this now, Forrest Gump, I'm talking this whole thing is going as whacked out as it can get. Race riots going on. Martin Luther King gets shot. It's absolute devastation. Violence, assassination happening, just absolute devastation. And in the middle of that, this youth movement is born that literally leads thousands upon thousands upon, the whole nation was shaped and affected. And much of what we know today of the large church movements and all this kind of thing, all got birthed out of that time period and the leadership that was brought up during that time. And so I guess what I'm saying to you is I think it's going to happen again. I think what people must have felt at that time, pastors of churches and leaders and things like that, and the feeling of irrelevance that the church had. I can remember at that time, nobody was looking to the church for meaning or input or relevance or anything like that. And to think in the midst of that environment that this Jesus movement is birthed and really a transformational experience takes place. And I believe we're at a time where another transformational experience takes place. I think somebody needs to sit down and remember, why do people go to church? I think, and what is church? What is real church? And maybe it's going to look very different from what we've experienced in the past, but I think that there is going to be a new expression that's going to come. And maybe it won't come from us in this room. But at that time, I can remember the movement that happened didn't come from the old timers, but the old timers created an environment where that movement could happen.
Yeah.
They created the room, they made the space, they encouraged, they fed the young people and fired the thing up. And I believe we're at a time like that where there's going to be a need to recognize a new thing is happening. It's, I can't identify it all for you right now or say where it's going to come from or what's going to happen, but I believe we're on the verge of something very powerful and very new. And so anyway, I wanted to share with you 5 little principles here that, as the way I expressed it in the book, is 5 principles that have never failed me in guiding my church through change and or my ministry or that kind of thing. Now, when we think about change, many of us in this room are really well set up to lead change, because what you need to lead change is credibility. I heard someone express it one time, I forget how they put it, whether they called it chips or that kind of stuff, but they said every time you bring a change to the church, there's a certain cost that's required. Every change has a price tag that's associated with it. And the price tag comes in terms of your credibility, right? So what is credibility? I put down 3 things that when I define credibility, I define it this way. Credibility is integrity, first of all, that you're a person of integrity, what you say you do, what you come through in that kind of way. And the second thing is that integrity is a proven record of competence. That when people look at you, they say, this person has made good decisions in the past, and therefore I think that they could make good decisions in the future. And then the third thing that we see is the favor of God. And what do I mean by the favor of God? Is that there's some obvious sign over you that people can see, that they say, hey, God's favor is on this person, this guy or this gal, and the Lord is with them. And so that's those three things added together are what is credibility. And to bring any change into a situation, and this is why young people, these principles are young leaders are really even more important, because, you know, by the time I had been a pastor in my church for 20 years, when it got down to the end, I could just say, we're going to change this.
Yeah.
This is going to happen, because I had built up 20 years worth of deposits in people's thinking and in people's minds. And those 20 years worth of deposit, you know, yes, it cost me something to say we're going to make some kind of a change in the way our services are conducted, or we're going to make a change in the timing of our services, or we're going to make a change in whatever it was. It cost me something for sure, but I had so much built up in the bank. And when you've been around a church for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you have a ton built up in the bank. But when you're new to something, when you're trying to persuade people to come with you, and you don't necessarily have all that buildup of credibility in the bank, some of these principles I'm going to share with you, I think, could be super, super valuable.
That's good.
The first one I talked about in the little note I sent out recently, which was to build momentum for change. And that is, anytime I go into a new situation, I'm looking for low-hanging fruit. I'm looking for small victories that I can have to begin to build up my credibility in the eyes of the people that I'm trying to influence and trying to bring with me on the thing that is trying to happen. So you have to build some momentum. That is, and it can be little things. It doesn't have to be big, huge activity we're talking about. It could be as little as putting together a Sunday school thank you party, and maybe the church has never done anything like that before, and you propose that idea, and you do a big thank you to all the staff and workers, and you put the whole, you have the whole party working out there and put it together and stuff like that, and you have that event, and that event, not a big event, but it's a significant thing. That event happens successfully, and you get to celebrate with the people, your team that put it together, and talk about it and stuff like that. And what does it do? It builds momentum. And like a train slowly trying to get started, there's that doomp, doomp. And I think this is important right now because, even though many of us have a great history with our churches, we've been around for a long time, the fact is, there's a kind of a restart button has been hit in a lot of our situations, right? It's like we're not where we were quite, we financially people are doing pretty good, but we're not exactly where we were before COVID hit. And some of our people that we never would have thought we would have really lost they've lost their way a little bit, and their sense of what does the church even mean and why should I even be there? They a lot of them have kind of lost a little bit of the touch of that. So I found building momentum is very important. So you do one little thing, you do another little thing. When I came onto the campus at Elam, I was searching for things to kind of get some momentum going. I can remember when I walked through the campus, there were so many things that were in a state of disrepair at that time. And I was, the guy who was in charge of facilities and things like that, he was with me, and I did a campus walkthrough. And he basically I said, okay, this needs to get repaired. This needs to get, and as I'm going along with these couple guys that are going with me, I can hear them making little hump sounds, behind me and stuff like that, And finally I get into the room, and the whole thing is over with. I said, what is the problem? I said, what, I'm saying, the guy looked at me, he says, don't you get it? He says, there's nobody to do this. He says, me, and here's this guy. There's nobody to do these things that need to happen on this campus, kind of a stuff. I said, that's my problem. I said, all I need for you to do is get everything lined up, get things ready, so that when we go, we can make this thing happen. And so I sent out a letter to about 30 pastors. Some of you that are in this group right here came, I think Chris and two Chris's there, and others that brought teams of people and came and and you just came in that summer and did some fantastic jobs. People came and did stuff. Well, every one of those jobs that got done, everything that happened, every building that got repaired, every stairwell that got rebuilt, everything like that, all this was doing for me was, it was like, chunk, 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 chunk. It was getting the train going so that I could even get my staff to respond when I spoke, right? I didn't have any credibility with them, really. And so this is the way it works. You build a momentum for change, little by little by little. And when they saw that happen, so the next time when I got up in front of them, then I said, okay, we're going to go after this project. We got these roofs that need to get done or whatever. We're going to go after this project. All at once, they were like, oh, okay, we can do that. We can, that'll come together, because they felt that, basically I had shown them it could happen, right? The things could turn. And so the big things, the little things that got repaired were little stairways and little things that were very annoying, but they were not huge and consequential. They were low-hanging fruit. But when those things got repaired, it created a feeling, that things can get done, things can happen again, things can move forward. And I'll be grateful to everybody, including you that are here, that helped me build up that momentum at that time. Okay, B, second thing. You've got to answer the key question everyone will ask about change, which is, and it's not the question that you think they're going to ask. The key, you think they're going to ask, how is this going to make things better? How are people going to be more blessed? Will more people be able to go to church because of this? Will more people get saved because of this? That's what you think people are going to ask. But really, the question people ask is, how does this affect me? If I go to change the time of the services, they're not going, oh, wow, this is going to create, we're going to have 2 services. That's going to mean there's going to be more opportunity for ministry for people. And there's going to be more choices for times. And there's going to be probably more chance that people will come. And they're going to, that's not what they're thinking. What they're thinking is, well, wait a minute, what about my friends? What service are they going to go to? They're thinking, well, what if there's a prophecy? We're not going to be able to, it'll be in one service, but it won't be in the other service, They're thinking, what about dinner? What about the football game? That second service, when is that going to get out? Right? They're thinking, these are the questions they're thinking. How does it affect me? How does it affect me? And you as a leader have got to get that into your head, that it doesn't mean the people are evil or the people are bad. It's just humanity. It's just the way people function. And so you got to get it in your head that when I'm introducing a change to the situation, I've got to listen to how people, what are the questions that they have? And so, often when I would introduce changes, I would start with small groups and then the next size group and then the next size group. I'd introduce the change idea to larger and larger groups. And each situation, I would give them a chance to flood me with all the issues that were on their mind. And then I would collect all those issues and I would try to come up with good answers for that. So when I made the next presentation, I would be able to answer those things that were in their mind. And then I would do it again and I'd do it again until finally when I stood in front of the whole congregation, there wasn't a question they had that was in their mind I didn't know that was going on. And I would try to make fun of some of the questions and I would laugh with some of the questions and we would talk about different ones. But they had to know I was hearing what was happening. If you don't do that, you never know what's going to happen. I remember when I was first getting started, Ron Smallman and I up in Oswego, New York, we made this decision about having a church supper. And we were going to have a church supper, blah, 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 and this kind of thing. And you wouldn't think it was a big deal, but there was a woman that had been kind of like in charge of this for decades in this little church. And she was like the little church mom. I don't know what you call her, the little kitchen mom of the kitchen. And so anyway, comes this morning of the church supper. I'm sitting in the behind the preacher when they used to have the guys sit up on the platform behind the preacher. I'm sitting behind the platform. Somebody comes up, whispers in my ear and says, she's locked herself in the kitchen and she won't let anybody in. The church mom has done this.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And so I went down and I had to talk her out, talk her off the cliff, I had to talk her off the cliff, but all that really happened because we didn't understand what we were doing. We were making a change without really considering the impact, for some of these, for that woman, that role in the church, she's not president of the United States. She's not president of a bank. She's not some big, that was her thing. I mean, that was like her role, this was her thing, see? And we just didn't even realize what we were doing. And we just rolled over her without even considering the full impact of what was going on. The third thing I put down here was we need to, if we're going to introduce change, we're going to be a change agent, we need to build consensus from the top down. And, I would always, anytime I was trying to introduce something new, some people are just kind of like, and like I said, after I'd been there 20 years, I could expend my chips and get things done in a more, I would call it maybe a more rushed way. But the normal process that I would follow is I would talk to the elders about what was happening. We would get a consensus among the elders. Then I would get all the lay pastors that were over the home group leaders. I'd meet with them, talk with them, get a consensus with them. Then I would talk with all the small group leaders and get a consensus with them until finally I'd build this consensus from the top. But by the time I got to the congregation, when I brought this thing up, most of the people in the room already had a little time to think about what I was talking about. And all the leadership was on board. I think I read somewhere, I can't remember exactly the statistic, but it was saying that basically to lead a group of 100 people, you only need about 25 people that really are on board with you. If you got 25 people that are on board with you, that are moving in the same direction as you are, the other 75 will line up with those 25 and will come with you. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be that you have to confer with every single person in the whole place, but you need to get the influencers basically on your side. And so I would build a consensus from the top down. I'm a strong believer in team. I really think it's very important to get people on your team, get people with you in the process, to have a group of, that it's not just you doing something, that it's a group of people doing something. And so we could have a whole discussion about the issue of team, but I'm going to let that go. And then the next one, and you've heard this quoted, Joe quotes this, I've heard him quoted several times: communication plus time equals united change. Communication plus time equals united change. If I wanted to bring a change to the church, it's my job to plan and think ahead. I would try and get a handle on that thing. So let's say, for example, in September, I wanted us to go to multiple services. We've never been multiple services. I want us to go to multiple services in September. In January, while I'm preaching, I start making some comment about, I could see us as a church someday having multiple services here. Wouldn't that be an amazing thing to see us be able to use the facility in that way, and blah, 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 blah.
Mike, we're not hearing you now.
You're not hearing me?
No, now we are. At least I wasn't hearing you.
Okay.
I'm
How's
good
it
now.
going, guys?
Good
Can you
now.
hear me?
Now we can.
Oh, I don't know. It was me all the way. Okay. What's the last thing you heard?
Communication plus time, united change.
Okay. So the point I was making is that if I was trying to move the church to multiple services, what I would do is in January, I would somewhere just make a small comment. Now, when I made that comment in January in my sermon, just an aside comment, I made that comment, I would have people lined up at the end of that service to talk to me. They come up, "Oh, we don't want to go to 2 services, do we, Pastor? That, I got all kinds of problems with that." And they would list all the different reasons. They just didn't think, and the church is going to be too corporate. And, we're not, how could we be a family in multiple services? And then, they would just come to me with that thing. And I'd say to them, I'd say, "Hey, look, I haven't even talked to the elders. I don't even know if there's an interest in this." I said, "No plans at all. It was just a thought, just an idea." And so I would introduce the idea. Then I'd introduce it again a little ways further down in the course of the year. Of course, I'd be talking with the elders about this and building up the thing and stuff like that. So I would just keep talking about it all the way through this process. Well, by the time we got to the next summer, the people who lined up at the beginning to tell me it couldn't happen, they were lining up at the end of the service saying, "Well, when are we going to multiple services? That's going to be great. Won't that be fantastic for the church? This, da, 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 da." Why? Because they had time to process.
Yeah.
And you cannot underestimate the power of this. I had to learn this as a leader. For example, I would have these weekly meetings of my church staff that would have the other pastors and different people that were in there. And I would come up with, "Hey, I want to see this thing happen or that thing happen, and let's talk about it." And what I discovered was this, that there were certain people on my staff that were not on your feet thinkers. They were the kind of people who had to go home and sit and process something. And so I made a mistake a few times. So we'd talk about something. I thought I'd heard from everybody, kind of a deal. And then I'd say, "Okay, well, then let's do this." Bam, would make a decision based on the input that I got in that meeting after I just had brought up this change. And then what would happen is days later, these people would start coming to me and say, "I don't think this is the right idea." Da, 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 da. I said, "Why didn't you say that in the meeting? We were all in the meeting. You could have said you didn't think it was the right idea." And what I discovered was this, that if I just made a decision based on immediate input in the meening, these people would feel like their arms had been twisted and that they had been moved into something that they really were not ready for. So I made a rule and I said, "Okay, well, we're going to do this. We're going to have discussion items and decision items." I know Chris Ball does this with in a lot of meetings he has now. And so what I would do is I'd say, "Okay, we're going to discuss, whatever the item was, multiple services. We're going to discuss multiple services today. And we're going to talk about it. But we're not going to make a decision until next week when we get together. So we're just going to talk about this thing." And that would give these people who were processors, it would give them time to think through and get on board so that they didn't feel like they were just blown out and they felt like they could come up with good things. I think it was, I think I underestimated how much resentment I produced in my staff.
Wow.
By just me making quick decisions without giving them some time. They were not asking for anything wrong. For me to demand that they process information the same exact way I did was not right. And so by giving them time, it made for a much more unified movement. And I would have to say we had amazing unity in that church. Even when I left, when I turned the church over to a 27-year-old young man, I can only think of one family that we lost out of the whole transition. It was just by using some of these different tools. And then the last thing I wanted to say was this: resign yourself to the fact that every change will be resisted by someone. You have got to just get this. Somehow there's in our thinking is this idea that if I hear God's voice, and if I'm doing what God wants me to do, then people are going to know and sense, and they're going to get on board with me, and they're going to be behind me in what's happening. But the truth is not that way at all. The truth is that sometimes when you bring up your idea, people see it as evil. Sometimes they're in process. They just need to process the thing, like I was describing to you just a few moments ago. Sometimes they're wrestling with the fact that they are not going with you. They're not supposed to be a part of the next phase of what's happening. And so they they're struggling with that, and they're trying to come to terms with that fact that that's happening in that kind of way. Sometimes they will actually see the item that you're bringing up. You know, you think of it as a positive improvement. They will actually see it as a betrayal of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so these are good people who want to do good things, but they get messed up in their thinking. And you have to be so careful, you know, to hold steady and not to let an outburst of anger. It's so easy when you have a burden, trying to move the ministry towards something you feel is important, and you have this person or persons resisting you. It's so easy to tip into an outburst of anger and to just want to throttle them and totally blow your cool and all this kind of stuff. But, you know, I just found that you just got to hold steady. You just keep explaining the thought behind it. You just keep standing with them. You just keep communicating in a reasonable, godly kind of way with people. And you have to get a hold of Christ. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. You know, you just got to get a hold of Jesus, in that Jesus spirit in the midst of the thing. And I found that over time, people will, you know, sometimes it takes a little time. Sometimes a person leaves. Sometimes there's some adjustment that has to take place inside of them. Sometimes there's some adjustment that has to take place inside of you in the situation. But you got to just hold steady. You know, when things are crazy, a leader holds steady. And I can remember when we were in the midst of building the building. I remember one big mistake. There were many mistakes that happened along the way, but one big mistake that happened, we're all sitting around a table one day, and in the top of all of you have been in the sanctuary there at Elam, but in the top of the sanctuary, there are like 4 or 5 beams, large steel beams that are something like 80 feet long, right? Each of these steel beams. It's the kind of thing that has to be made in a special time that they make these things. So anyway, we're sitting all together. I'm sitting with the construction people and my leadership people and all the different stuff. And we're going, okay, we're almost to the point where we need the beams to come in so we can start work on the roof. And so I turned over to one of them. I said, well, did you contact about the beams? You know, no, I didn't do that. I think that's so-and-so's job. Did you do such and such? No, I didn't do it. That's so-and-so's job. No, I didn't do it. That was so-and-so's job. And I said, nobody has ordered the beams. When can the beams be done? Well, the beams are, we contact the people, that run's already done. We will do that again, 6 months from now. We're coming in on winter. Some of you may have remember what this looked like, but we had to take the whole building and wrap it in saran wrap. A giant plastic covering over the whole building so they could continue to work, because we had no roof. And the whole building had to be protected from weather by being, I felt like an absolute idiot. And I can remember many times during that time, I would come to work. My door in my office had a little window in it, and I would come to work and I would sit in my chair right there. And I was so overwhelmed, I couldn't do anything. But I would just sit in the chair. And when the people in the office would go by, I could see them looking in the little window and see me there sitting. And I knew as long as I sat in that chair, they would keep going. They would keep doing what they needed to do. They would keep. And so sometimes I was so overwhelmed. All I would do is sit there, and just people would go by the window. I'd wave at the window, they would go by. We can make it, we can do it, and sometimes that's the biggest job you have. You thought you needed to say something. You thought you needed to do something. All you needed to do is hold steady. Just sit there. You just sit there. When they see you hanging in there, they will hang in there too. They will hold steady too. Well, those are the thoughts I wanted to share with you today. I think you'd said, Joe, that maybe we were going to have a little Q&A. This
Yeah.
group, I'd love to hear
Yeah.
some of the things that's in their minds.
I'd love to be able to hear from them too. Do we have some questions, comments from Mike on some of the things that he's sharing with us? It is good stuff. Thanks, Roger, for putting that. Really good, thoughtful stuff. What does it make you think about, or questions that you'd want to ask? I know I particularly, while you guys are thinking, I particularly liked what you said in the beginning, Mike, on because sometimes I get very discouraged by the polarization that we find in our culture, and I even say to people, well, in the 60s, people were out in the street, literally our government shot students to death. I mean, killed them right on the campus. So, and, talk about race polarization with the race issues and stuff like that. And God moved in a great way. And it's somehow it's all preparation for that. So I like that confirmation of that in my own heart. Somebody else? What's
You guys probably had experiences like this stuff that you on your own that you could share.
Let me, Joanne, while we're thinking.
I think
let's
Bob
go
had his
down-
hand up, just to say Bob Santos had his hand up.
Oh, where's Bob? Bob, go ahead.
Oh. I don't know where I am on your screen, Joe. I just really appreciate your point about recognizing that some people are processors. Because I resemble that remark, and I'm somebody that I need time to process an idea, to think it through, and then come up with a decision or whatever. And I've been in those situations where something's been forced on me, and I've bucked against it. For the very reason that you're talking about, is that I just didn't have time to process. So I really appreciate that point.
Awesome. Yeah, I love too, Mike, that line, that when you force something, forced decisions can produce resentment. That's really something to think about when you're trying to make a change and moving too fast. Wow, I thought that was really good. Somebody else? What are you thinking about? Yeah, Roger.
I'll
ahead,
just
Rob.
say that I'm the polar opposite of that usually, and I'm the one that really has to look out for the guys like Bob, because I when I really believe the Holy Spirit's giving me direction, nothing stops me. And it's like it's full steam forward. The train's already moving and nothing is stopping that train at that point. So those are always good thoughts to remember, all the different perspectives of people, to keep that in line so that we do bring everybody along the best we can, and hopefully
Yeah.
lose as few as possible.
Thanks for that transparency, Roger.
Yeah,
Well, and when we want to go full steam ahead, it's usually we've taken time to process it as a leader.
Yep,
We already have
exactly.
processed it, and we haven't thought to care about the others who need time to process
So
it.
good. So good.
And so it's just a matter of caring for them.
Yeah. Thanks, Jack. Chris Wall, you had a hand up there.
yeah, I just wanted to say, Mike, to build consensus from the top down. I always used to say at my church with the elders there, and I feel this way even in this role that I'm in now. If the elders are on board, I could take on hell with a water pistol.
Yep.
And again, obviously in bigger change, the more consensus down, but specifically the idea that you brought about the top down, because if you can get a mass majority of people in the pews agreeing with you, but if the elders aren't with you, it's not going to go. It's not going to fly.
Excellent. Excellent. Joanne, put up the mastermind stuff. I just want to let you guys know, again, we'll get back to, you can give some feedback here and questions, but I wanted to let you know that we're putting some mastermind groups together. Some of our masterminders are here. Joan Wood is going to be doing, these are small groups, about 6 or 8 people get together weekly or bi-weekly, some might even monthly, on different topics. And Joan is going to be doing one, women in ministry. That's women who are doing ministry, different types of ministry. It's a place where you can work on goals and objectives and stuff. I'm really excited about what Mike Pickering's going to be doing on church leadership and management, kind of some stuff that you don't learn in Bible school, that he wants to help small church pastors, bivocational people, kind of work through some of the tech stuff or some of the financial stuff, just some things like that. He's going to do excellent. And hey, I know you guys have books in you, and you've been wanting to get one written. Bob Santos has done a number of books and wants to get together with some people who want to do that. It can really kickstart you in that way. Julie Beater, does an awesome job with leadership. We're just looking for different ministry leaders to get together. Again, you're working on goals, you're working on personal stuff. These are really powerful times. They're going to be starting in September, different, and Julie's October. There's a jot form. We're going to be putting a jot form in the chat here, and you can actually get signed up. They're free. Masterminds, you heard Mike talk about a mastermind he was in with me. They're just phenomenal ways to kind of grow. I think I look at them as discipleship groups is the way I look at them. There is a beginning to them and an end, so it's not like you'd be in it forever. If you have more questions, you can contact me or contact one of the leaders and talk to them more about it. But there's a jot form there that would help you.
Phil Taylor has his hand up.
Yes, Phil.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I really do appreciate that idea of bringing people on board with it that are processors, because it's easy to work with people that are excited about something and are on the same page with you. But it requires us to build relationship when there's somebody who is not necessarily going against the ministry, but they're wanting additional information. And sometimes as a leader, it can almost be difficult for us to understand why somebody needs more information. We can take that like, well, they don't trust us, or they don't want to come along with us, or something like that. But the reality is that most people who are on our teams want to be with us, but they want full buy-in. And if we don't take the time to let them process, then they don't have full buy-in. And there we are trying to drag them along. And maybe there's 4 or 5 of us that are like, yeah, this is great, let's run into it. But still there's the one that's processing. It requires us to build a relationship with that processor. And I've kind of experienced that a little bit, because I'm more of a time taker and processor and relationship builder. And so, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I really feel like the Lord has laid on my heart to do this ministry, I'm like, let's put that one on simmer and let's see what happens. And it's been exciting to be able to see relationships build through catching the vision and being able to hear the vision. I like what Pastor Mike was saying about introducing something in January that you want to do in September. I've had opportunity to roll out those same kind of things as we've done major renovations at our building, and under his tutelage and with the Wayne Headland and different ones that have been speaking into my life, I was always like, hey, let's tear this wall down next Thursday. And Wayne would be like, you probably don't want to do that too many times, but you want to build relationship with people and get them to know where it is that you're going. Because once they buy in, now what you have to do is you actually have to throttle them back. And that's exciting when people get so excited about something that you're doing that they're trying to push you along, and you're the one that's having to throttle them back a little bit and not necessarily trying to keep everybody up. It's just a fun aspect of it. And so I've really appreciated even Pastor Mike, when I first started doing all this, he came and had lunch with me and had a cup of coffee with me and talked to me through about team building. And it's an incredible experience to be able to see people kind of arriving at the same conclusions. That it's not really, it might even sound manipulative, but it's not, because what you're wanting to do is bring everybody along with you. And it was just, it's exciting to see that happen on a team.
The way I express it, Phil, is I say it's manipulation if you're doing it for you. It's
Right.
persuasion if you're doing it for the cause, you know, for the thing that you're trying to accomplish, right? If it's somehow to improve your situation, your benefit, you know, kind of a deal, then it's a different deal.
Amen to that.
Excellent. Good way to put it. Thanks, Phil. That was really good input.
I see Ron has his hand up, Ron Silver, and I saw also Mike Wilson had his hand up earlier.
Ron?
Yeah, Mike, could you talk about let's say a people vision? Coming into a church pretty early on, have not had the years to build up the credibility, but looking at the standard of leadership, the expectation on leadership, wanting to take that and raise it to have people really grasp what it means to be a spiritual leader in a church and to develop the whole team.
Yeah. Ron, if I was going into a situation like that, for example, sometimes you'll hear of people who have gone into situations and maybe the previous leadership, you know, their board was actually composed of business people because they were business people, not because they were spiritual or anything like that, or you know, or somehow people are in there that really don't have any kind of a spiritual foundation, or not much of one anyway. And I think I can think of Pastor Eric Scott and some others. They've put together like training for elders and for leaders and stuff. And they would just begin. I did too. I actually have a little booklet that I would walk people through, and I would just go through when we talk about the different aspects of you know, different roles of eldership, leadership. What does it mean to be a leader spiritually, blah, 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 blah. And we'd walk them through that kind of stuff. And in a sense, you're taking them and you're building consensus with them. There's a word that's really helped me a lot. And it's this idea that signs follow the preaching of the word. So that if I'm trying to bring a certain result about, I need to teach people and preach on that area so that then the signs begin to follow, things begin to happen, stuff begins to go on, God begins to move in on the situation, you know. So I would say you've got to take time to say, okay, well, my first job now, I'm new to this place, everything else, is to take my leadership team and get them all on the same page in terms of who we are, what we are, where we're going. So people will exclude themselves. You know, when you start laying out the standard and talking about, if they're not willing to go there, they'll go, okay, I'm not interested in this. This is not the kind of experience I was after. If they are willing to go there, then you're going to lift up these people to a new level, you know, in that kind of way. So that's what I found is that you just got to whatever you want to see happen, you got to begin to speak the word of that. And then the signs will follow the preaching of the word.
Good. Mike Wilson, you had a hand up?
Your mic is blocked.
I did. I just sent it to the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, the question that I posted there, how do you know when a person is not in need of more information or time to process the issue, but is simply a resistor?
Yeah.
They're just very stubborn people. You know, whatever, you know, they're either acting out of fear and they're digging in their heels, what have you. And this is a mistake I believe I made early on when I was a young pastor. I spent most of my time and energy with the resistors, trying to convince them that come along, and multiple conversations and lots of prayer. And in the meantime, the folks who caught the vision and were willing to move were just stagnating. And I kept saying, well, just give me some more time. I want to bring more people into the tent. And they're like, well, we want to move now. And what I discovered was I started losing those folks, the ones that wanted to move, the leaders that were like, you know, we're ready. How long are you going to put into these folks that just keep resisting. So I learned back some years ago, I do want to bring as many folks along. I do want to try to encourage more participation and buy-in, and I'll have all the conversations I need. But at some point, I need to realize there are some folks that if Jesus came and told them, they would say no to him, and I'm trying, it's over the years, I've just personally got this system set up where I say, time out. I love you, but now I've got to go be with the folks who are ready to move. And, maybe sometime you could come with us, but there has to be a cutoff, I think. And I just wondered if you knew, or if you had some thoughts about how to
I don't think I could say it, Mike, any better than you've said it. I mean, that's just it's a reality, right? Obviously we know Jesus did come. Jesus was there in the skin, right there with them, speaking to them. And there were people that were going, I don't think so. I don't get it. So, when you realize that there is a reality, right? But there's a difference between ending there and beginning there, right? Some people, as soon as they face any resistance, they take it all personally and they immediately, start reacting and this kind of thing. That's not going to work. You got to give people time, but once they've had time, then they're going to need to make a decision. If the majority is going some way, I don't really, some people move by unanimity. Everything they do has to be 100% unanimous. I personally don't feel that's a good idea for two different reasons. One reason I don't think it's a good idea is because you end up being bound sometimes by the weakest person in the group. But the other thing that I found reason is it puts you in a situation where you have to force certain people or feel compelled to force certain people to change their beliefs about something. For example, we had an elder who had an issue about marriage. He didn't believe any divorce, anything like that at all. He was totally, there was just no messing around there. That was just, his thing, right? So when we were looking at the elders, the body of church elders, they didn't hold that same viewpoint. And there were some things that we wanted to move forward on that if we had insisted on unanimity, we would have had to say that we would have been held captive by this guy's very narrow view on a very important subject, but a very, very narrow view. So we had to just get to the point that we gave him the freedom. We said to him, basically there's 5 of us, 1 of you, we feel this is the way we're supposed to go. And he was like, okay, I don't have as long as you don't make me do it. He didn't have a problem, right? But we would have felt pressured to keep pushing him all the time to a different viewpoint when he had a conscientious viewpoint. And so I feel by giving room so that things don't have to be unanimous, you're also protecting people. It's not just about getting what you want done. You're protecting people, that people don't have to be forced into 100% conformity on every issue.
That's good.
And I like what you said there, particularly about, ideally you'd want unity, 100% unity on a decision in an ideal world, in an ideal church. And we just don't have that, in most settings today. And when I first came to the church I'm at, we've changed things now. They wanted that. You had to have unanimity in every decision. And if one person said no, then the discussion was over. And at one point, I asked the question at an elder meeting, who's the most powerful person on this church board? And they said, oh, the pastor. And I said, no. I said, it's the person who says no. They're the ones that get to decide everything for this church. I mean, we could all be, 99% in unity over decision, and the one brother says no, and that's it. And so they're actually leading the church, not the rest of us.
Sure.
So I appreciate that insight. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Mike Wilson. Anybody else? Any questions or comments?
I'm,
Yeah,
uh,
Ron Mandley?
yeah, Mike, maybe you could share a little bit about what it takes to turn the church over to a 27-year-old.
A lot of guts.
Just, yeah, a lot of guts, but there's I'm not getting any younger. And so if you got any insight there, I'd appreciate it. So,
Well, this sounds like it should almost be another whole,
Yeah.
whole for us, discussion for us to have in that thing. But, you know, one thing I will say about transitions like that, and I've experienced this now through the church and through the Bible school, they are fraught with opportunity for offense. And when you're making any kind of transition, you're making any kind of a change like that of leadership and things like that, you got to make a decision. If you're the leader, you've been the leader, you got to make a decision. I am not going to allow myself to get offended in this change. I'm not going to, because people do things without even realizing, you know, and you just need to realize, okay, I'm going to do, you know, that doesn't answer the question that you're saying about dealing with younger leaders. I'd be happy to talk with you personally about that, Ron. I would love to do that, but that's a long answer. But this is just saying, I'm just saying to you, transition is filled with opportunity for offense, and you need to set your heart to navigate those transitions without offense, because there's just almost no way to get through it without feeling like, well, this should have happened, or that should have happened, or somebody should have responded this way or that way, or, you know, whatever it is. You just got to let it go.
Yep. It's good. Anybody else? These are great questions and comments. I appreciate it. Have we covered everything, Joanne, that I wanted to cover? I think we have.
Yeah, you didn't really talk about the coach training, but I put
Oh, yeah.
I put the jot form link up
Right.
there.
We do have a coach training course coming up in September. If you're interested, or you know somebody that's interested in learning to be a coach, you know, again, contact us. You can do that through email, or there's a jot form. It's a great course. We try to make it very affordable for people.
The jot form is for people to sign up to come to the informational Zoom that you're going to do. I think it's tomorrow.
Is it really? You got to keep me on track, Joanne.
Oh, I'm working hard at it. Yeah, it's tomorrow at 2.
Yeah, okay. Tomorrow at 2:00, we can meet again. Hey, just in closing, I just thought Mike did a great job. Appreciate what he's doing. You can find more information. The ebooks are actually free if you go to notmanyfathers.org.
.com.
Again, it's in the chat there, but notmanyfathers.com, and you can sign up for that stuff. You can get more contact with some of the resources that Mike has. I also want to just leave you with, again, talking about change and transition. You know, one of the things that I was reading in John chapter 15, that, you know, the whole pruning thing, that, you know, I realized that it's after great success that God comes in and prunes, you know, he chops that thing down. You know, grapevines are chopped down to almost nothing. He takes the fruitful part after the harvest, after the success, and he brings tremendous change to this, to actually one of the strongest parts of who we are. At least that's the way I look at it. You know, that's where the wine comes from, the grapes and all. So if you're in a time when you're feeling, you know, a really difficult, you know, because a lot of us are in those difficult times trying to find our way. But like Mike's already said, but I find it in John 15, we see a real illustration of a transition time, a change time that's very, very difficult. It's painful to be chopped all the way back, especially in success. But God is always setting us up for a greater success, a greater harvest. You know, and he may take our best part and chop it back before he does something even greater through us. So if you're in pain, experiencing, you know, some tribulation and despair, you know, hang in there, because there is a harvest coming, and that's not just, that's what Jesus said, fruit, more fruit, and fruit that'll last. So I was encouraged when I read that, and I wanted to share it with you. All right, I think we probably should say goodbye. I'm sorry. Hopefully I'll see some of you at 2 o'clock tomorrow. But again, Mike, thanks a lot for taking the time and sharing with us. Chris Ball, thank you for coming and saying hello to us. And again, everybody else.
Yeah, good to see
It's
everybody.
good to see everybody. Thanks a lot. And keep your eye out for more meetups. It's always fun to see you.
If somebody's interested in this video, are they able to get that from you?
Yeah,
Yes, we have to edit it. And yeah, but if you let us know if you want the video, we can get it to you.
I'd like a copy.
All right, that puts me under pressure now. So, okay, good. Who wants to pray for us to